Silence bites. It removes the leverage you think you need and replaces it with something sharper. Most people treat silence as an absence, a vacancy to be filled. I treat it as a tool that reshapes how others value you. I have studied social dynamics and power for years and tested methods in boardrooms, families, and street-level interactions. Today, I will give you 5 cold, practical tactics that make disrespect costly for anyone who tries it. This is not soft self-help. This is a manual for how you rearrange expectations around you. Before we go on, write in the comments the sentence, "My silence speaks for me," and share one moment when you wanted to say something and did not. Imagine a meeting where a colleague cuts you off, laughs, and moves the conversation as if you were not in the room. Picture not scrambling for a witty comeback, but using a calibrated pause that changes the energy in the room. That is what this will teach you step by step. Most people believe respect is earned through warmth, competence, or charm. That is the comfortable story we tell ourselves. The uncomfortable truth is that respect is enforced by boundaries and predictable consequences. People test boundaries constantly because it is cheaper to test than to risk permanent loss. A joke, a cut, a small condescension, a repeated interruption, all are probes. They are not accidents, they are measurements. You have been trained to misread many of them as social quirks instead of as intentional tests. When you see that pattern, you stop reacting to each incident and start changing the infrastructure around your interactions. That shift is the difference between being undone by someone and being untouchable to their small violences. I will show you why the probe becomes rare when the cost of probing increases, and how to raise that cost without violence or theatrical outbursts. You will learn to set the rules so others play by them or choose to leave the table. Tool 1. Silence and control. Silence is not a void. Silence is a precise instrument that reshapes the tempo of a conversation and assigns weight to what you do say. When you remove the immediate reward of attention, you force the tester to decide whether the act was meaningful. The scene I want you to imagine is a project meeting. The room smells of stale coffee and paper. The fluorescent light hums. Your laptop is warm under your palms. Mark, on the left, smiles as he interrupts you. The dialogue is simple and stretched so you can feel the rhythm. I speak. Mark speaks. I pause. Mark pushes. I remain silent. Mark tries a joke. I stare. Mark leans back. I breathe slowly. Mark checks his phone. I close my notebook. Mark clears his throat. I put my hand flat on the table. Mark apologizes. That is 9 shifts. Each silence is a weight. The sound of a pen tapping, the rustle of a sleeve, the click of a chair. All those small noises amplify the absence. Sensory detail matters. The metallic taste of coffee, the slight warmth of the sun on your wrist, the faint scent of cologne, the scratch of fabric when you shift, the soft exhale from someone next to you. They all make the silence tangible. You are not ignoring, you are calibrating presence. The effect is immediate. People expect noise. When you withhold it, they misread the ownership of the space. They backfill with uncertainty. That uncertainty is your leverage. Tool 2. Consistency implacable. Patterns beat charisma. If you apply the same rule every time, you create an economy around your attention. Consistency is boring to the aggressive mind and dangerous in its predictability. I will illustrate with a scene across friends and colleagues, so you see the network effect. At a small dinner, the protagonist remarks and 5 people react. Lena scoffs and changes the subject. Javier laughs too loudly. Priya looks at her phone. Marcus nudges Lena. Dana raises an eyebrow. Olivia, quiet, watches you. In the next week, the same pattern happens in a meeting. Mark interrupts. Lena attempts to cut you off with a joke. Javier stages a competitive anecdote. Priya softens a point publicly. Marcus tries to reclaim authority. Dana insinuates a minor slight in an email. Each time you enforce the same rule, you shrink the space for tests. The rule is simple and repeated. You do not answer jokes at your expense. You do not explain yourself when someone diminishes your work. You pause, you name the behavior, you apply a predictable consequence. For example, you might say in a calm voice, "I will return to this when we are discussing it appropriately," and then you follow through by stepping out or by moving the conversation offline. You do this every single time. Over days, other people learn the forecast. The social costs of testing you accumulate in reputation. Scent and texture matter here too. The clink of cutlery at the dinner table, the soft rasp of a chair under someone shifting, the faint whir of an air conditioner in the meeting room, the visual of your removed hand from the table, the residual echo of a paused sentence. Those little sensory cues become signals in the network. They tell observers that you are consistent. They change how friends like Lena and colleagues like Mark budget their behavior around you. At this point, leave a short comment, "My silence speaks for me," and report one moment you missed. Tool 3. Response disproportionate, memorable. The point is not cruelty. The point is structure. When someone crosses a line, respond in a way that creates a durable memory of the boundary. A proportional argument resolves a single incident. A disproportionate, calibrated response creates a template for future behavior because it is anchored in narrative. Imagine a case where a manager publicly takes credit for your idea. You could raise your voice and create a fight. You could document and escalate, which is functional but slow. Or you could respond in a sharp, non-theatrical, disproportionate but precise way that reframes the scene. The scene plays out in a small conference room. The walls are beige, the carpet slightly numb underfoot, sunlight catching dust motes. Your voice is even. The manager smiles. You say, "You presented my slides as yours. Thank you for the visibility. I will send a corrected version and copy the team." You pause and slide your phone to record the context. The room temperature feels colder because attention focuses. That act of documentation, combined with calm naming, is a larger move than a shout, but it is memorable because it rewrites the story for anyone watching. Sensory notes here: the click of the phone, the subtle change in the manager's breath, the shiver of a paper under fingertips, the taste of copper from sudden anger reframed as distance, the hollow echo of your measured words. This creates a moment people recount later because it is not ordinary. Tension follows the repercussion. When someone asks why you were so deliberate, you will say, "Because I do not fund theft." That reply is clean, precise, and leaves a pattern behind. Backstory. The reason I teach this is not theoretical. I grew up in a household where voices rose and then left scars. My father used volume as currency, and my mother used charm as shield. I learned early that both tactics leave you vulnerable. I spent my 20s testing rules among friends in volatile dinners, negotiating project credit in early jobs, and watching reputations harden around constants. I worked as a mediator, a consultant, and later advised small executive teams where social tests were constant. The most striking lessons were consistent. When silence is intentional and when consequences are predictable, the number of tests drops dramatically. These experiences shaped the model I use now. I do not teach performative stoicism. I teach structured control. That history connects directly to the scenes here, because the tools are not abstract. They were refined in rooms with coffee stains, under fluorescent lights, next to people like Mark, Lena, Javier, Priya, and Marcus, who test, while Olivia and Dana observe and adjust. Tool 4. Build a shadow image. Your presence should pre-qualify who approaches you. A shadow image is the set of small cues that make someone assume you are not worth baiting. It is posture, pacing, the way you answer texts, the photos you show on social media, the way you greet people in the hallway. The technique is selectional. You edit the signals that invite testing, consciously choosing a minimal online footprint, refusing to react to public provocation, keeping your calendar visibly full. All these create friction. At a networking event, your posture, the slow clarity of your handshake, the absence of eager laughter, the deliberate spacing when you stand, the temperature of your gaze, the slightly elevated volume of your voice when you speak with a peer rather than a subordinate, the texture of your clothing all act like small gates. People will scan these signals before they decide to probe. Train them to see a gate and move on. Tool 5. A Machiavellian catalog. People repeat patterns. Catalog them. Create a simple inventory of who tests and how. Name types. For example, the interrupter who smiles, the minimizer who laughs, the thief who claims credit, the warmer who weaponizes care, the silent underminer who moves support away in private. Keep a small file or mental map. For each person, note the trigger, the setting, and the cost of letting it persist. Decide in advance who you will exclude casually, who you will correct publicly, who you will escalate formally. This is not about playing people. This is about risk management. When you know Javier interrupts in large groups and Lena undermines by joking at dinners, you stop treating each instance as an isolated failure and begin treating it as a predictable vector to manage. The process detail matters. For meetings, prepare an agenda and share it. For credit theft, maintain time-stamped documents and a record of contributions. For family tests, have a ready phrase and an exit plan. These technical steps take about 5 minutes each, but they change outcomes over months because they turn social friction into traceable data. The click of a saved file, the timestamp on an email, the smell of your breath as you read through messages at midnight. These sensory anchors make the catalog real. Tension moment 1. He confronts you in the stairwell after a meeting. He speaks fast, breath hot, words trying to dominate the narrow space. You answer slowly, volume low. The echo in the stairwell makes every syllable seem decisive. He pushes with accusations. You do not match volume. You move aside and say, "I will address this in writing," and then you leave the stairwell with a steady step. The impact is immediate. Other colleagues who overheard the edge in the corridor stop mid-conversation later that day because their memory of the stairwell exchange changes how they interpret both of you. The sensory details count. The dampness in the stairwell, the metallic clang of a shoe on concrete, the slight sting in your throat when you breathe, the faint perfume of his jacket, the whisper of a paper your hand closes on. All of that turns the exchange into a precise memory rather than a scene of chaos. Tension moment 2. At a family dinner, an aunt ridicules your career choice. The room smells of roast and lemon. Plates scrape. Voices rise, then dip. You feel the heat in your neck. Instead of answering, you fold your napkin, look her in the eye, and say, "I prefer to focus on work that matters to me." And then you place your napkin and look away. That measured refusal to engage rewrites the usual script. Later, the aunt recounts the moment. The sensory notes remain. The clatter of cutlery, the citrus on the air, the wool of your sleeve against your wrist, the soft lighting catching a bead of sweat at her temple, the quiet you choose to keep. This calibrated retreat forces a reassessment of power in the family circle. Tension moment 3. In a brainstorming session, a peer loudly dismisses your idea. Sound bites of laughter surround the room. You do not argue. You take a breath, you close your laptop, you say, "You dismissed that without engaging the data. I will share the evidence and follow up next meeting." And then you walk out to take a call that you pretend is urgent. That walk registers. The cell phone pressed to your ear, the click of your shoes on polished tile, the small pause the room takes when you leave, the faint smell of your perfume, the rustle of papers left on the table, all create a narrative of control. The disproportionate move is to remove your presence from a scene where you are being minimized. It produces space for your idea to be reconsidered later with facts rather than with jokes. Psychology recap and synthesis. The 5 tactics together form an architecture. Silence assigns weight. Consistency builds reputation. Disproportionate responses create templates. Shadow image reduces opportunity. The catalog turns behavior into data. Psychologically, this works because humans prefer predictable economies. When the cost of a test becomes visible and consistent, they stop testing. When you stop providing immediate emotional returns to provocations, you remove the reward loop. When you make consequences and records visible, you shift the risk calculus. Your goal is not to make enemies. Your goal is to make disrespect inefficient. Apply these tools with calm, not with theatrics. Apply them with the signal that you are not fragile and therefore not worth attacking. If you want more concrete scripts, subscribe to find longer case studies and exercises. Epilogue, 1 month later. 1 month later, the small changes start to show. Meetings are smoother. Interruptions drop by half. You receive fewer passive-aggressive emails. Friends who used to test you in casual settings begin to pause before joking. Your calendar begins to reflect a change. Someone who previously dominated your conversations now schedules time with you rather than trying to hijack a moment. You notice sensory shifts. Coffee tastes less metallic because stress is lower. You sleep more deeply. A colleague named Marcus sends a message apologizing for an earlier comment without fanfare. Lena messages privately to say she misread your tone and will be more careful. These are small wins, but they compound. The first month is proof of concept. Keep the habit. Keep the same phrases. Keep the recording practices. The tangible consequences you set are beginning to do the heavy lifting. Epilogue, 3 months later. At 3 months, the architecture becomes reputation. Your team begins to defer to your agenda. You receive credit more often and unsolicited offers. To collaborate, multiply. People you rarely interact with start to pre-qualify you in corridors, saying things like, "I heard you handled that project well. Can we speak?" The catalog you kept pays off because patterns are visible. A former manager who used to take credit for work now finds it harder to do so because you have documented precedents and colleagues who saw your calibrated responses. Social friction in your immediate network becomes lower because tests have become rare. You feel less need to defend yourself and more energy to drive work forward. Friends like Olivia and Dana comment that you seem less reactive and more centered. That center is not softness. It is a distribution of attention that preserves you. Epilogue, 6 months later. At 6 months, the results are structural. Promotions, invitations, leadership roles, and better relationships are more likely because reputation has become currency. Where once small acts of disrespect were frequent, they are now anomalies. People who consistently misbehave are either outside your circle or have adapted to the new rules. You notice a deeper difference. The quality of interactions improves. Meetings are shorter, decisions clearer, and you spend less time cleaning up emotional spillover. The sensory world around you shifts too. Coffee in the morning tastes richer. Office air feels less heavy. Your phone vibrates with useful messages rather than crises. Your coat hangs without the weight of defensive posture. The Machiavellian catalog is not cruelty, it is efficiency. It preserves your bandwidth for creative and strategic work. Keep the silence as a tool. Keep consistency as policy. Keep proportionate responses as memory makers. Keep your image as a gate, and keep cataloging behaviors. Over months, these small, disciplined moves make you effectively untouchable in the ways that matter most. Conclusion. If one lesson sticks, it is this: respect is not a favor. It is a predictable economy you build with rules and follow-through. Silence is not passivity. Silence is a weapon when it is chosen and calibrated. Use it to change the cost of probing. Use consistency to make behavior forecastable. Use disproportionate responses to create templates that others will remember. Build a shadow image and keep a catalog. Start today. Write "My silence speaks for me" in the comments and tell one moment you will handle differently. Subscribe if you want longer scripts and case studies that walk you through exact phrases and recording practices. Remember this final line. Silence is not absence. Silence is a decision that forces others to pay for their disrespect.